Hitting on a breakout running back is one of the best ways to immediately tilt a dynasty league in your favor. And today, Jeff Bell and I are going to talk about 6 running backs that are poised for a breakout in 2025. Jeff, I got to be honest, man. When I said that we were doing breakout running backs, I was expecting a lot of year 1, year 2, year 3 guys. You've got a few veterans on here, which leads me to the question: at what age do we stop counting on a running back to potentially break out? Do you have an answer for that?
Well, I mean, Raheem Mostert was 31 in 2023. So we're just looking for production. We're looking for players that give you potentially undervalued production. So if I'm going to define a breakout that way, I mean, it puts a lot of different players in play.
Yeah, I agree with you. And I think that outside of the box thinking is what makes you one of the better analysts out there, Jeff, bringing some fresh opinions out there. And let's hear it. The first guy that you want to talk about is an interesting name. And I'm just going to let you ISO right now. Let me hear about why you think David Montgomery could be a breakout player in 2025.
Yeah, it's all about the valuation that David Montgomery is carrying right now. And certainly I understand we're talking about dynasty valuation. And so him being at the age that he is at, his value is gonna be a little bit lower, but even his redraft ADP and valuation is not that far off of the running back 24 valuation that we got off of Keep Trade Cut. And so I just think that that's, to me, it's really underselling what David Montgomery has been doing over the last couple of seasons for Detroit. And I know that there are certainly concerns about Ben Johnson being gone there, but this is a player that, even with Jahmyr Gibbs on the field, has been a running back one over
Mhm.
when he has been playing. And we know that should Jahmyr Gibbs miss any time, and we're talking about potential top 5 running back upside here for David Montgomery. And so I'm very much in on David Montgomery. I'm in on, if you're going to give me the discount because you think that Jahmyr Gibbs is going to have 70% of the work, definitely give me David Montgomery at that discount. And even it's beyond being a touchdown dependent player, but we saw what Jamal Williams did with touchdowns in this offense before he just disintegrated into nothingness. But we know that David Montgomery has 1,000 yard upside with a healthy Jahmyr Gibbs, and so you stack that touchdown upside on top of that. I mean, this is just a player that I think he is out of sight, out of mind, maybe a little bit, way too much. But we know, again, he's giving you potentially running back one production week in and week out with Gibbs, and has contingent upside on top of that.
Yeah, and just turned 28 years old too. So I know a lot of people are going to see a 28-year-old running back and just write him off for dead in Dynasty. But like you say, we're talking about the valuation here, and he's being valued essentially as an RB3 in Dynasty. You look at that RB24 evaluation right at the fringe of an RB2 and an RB3, and you could probably squeeze another 2, 3, maybe even 4 years of productivity out of David Montgomery. And as long as he's in this offense, you're looking at standalone top 15 value. And then the upside is so immense if Jahmyr Gibbs misses any time. So, like I said, it was kind of an interesting player, but I think you made a compelling point there. And I can't really push back too hard on anything you said. I think the only really worry that we have about David Montgomery at this point is his age, in which case we are probably overreacting, which makes him a good discount. So I'm with you on that one. Um, Jeff, I got to take a layup here. I really do. And I hate to do this. We're talking about potential breakouts for the 2025 season, but it seems like the hottest piece of news right now going around this week is what is happening in the Chargers backfield. And early on, when we were talking earlier in the offseason, I told everyone to be a little bit cautious of the projected workload for Omarion Hampton. I thought that Najee Harris was going to be much more involved than people would have expected. He was a veteran that they gave a decent contract to. We know historically Greg Roman has liked to split up backfields in the past, but now we're looking at this situation with Najee Harris, which doesn't look good, frankly. Like, I don't have the best feelings about it. And then we get some weird quotes from Harbaugh today saying that he doesn't know if Najee Harris is even going to be back by the end of training camp. And we got to realize this is Najee Harris's first time in the NFL that he is playing in a new system. Every year has been with the Pittsburgh Steelers under Mike Tomlin, and now he is on a new team. He's going to miss potentially all of install in training camp. And to me, that just pushes the doors wide open for Omarion Hampton to just take over the lion's share of this backfield. Of course, as the season progresses, we could see Najee Harris come back. We want to see him get healthy and we want to see him be able to play. But the reality is right now that we're looking at Omarion Hampton, who is just a workout warrior, athleticism off the charts, just a big, stout, physical runner behind one of the league's best offensive lines with a quarterback that is going to keep defenses honest. And he is going to get the lion's share of the work to start the season. So even though he's being valued right now as the RB6, Jeff, it's not crazy to think that after this year, he could immediately just vault himself into that Bijan Jahmyr Gibbs tier and be looked at as one of the best running backs in Dynasty.
Yeah, and this is a delicate situation because we really don't know what we're
Right.
dealing with what Najee Harris is dealing with, and it's doubly delicate because there was frustration, maybe is a good way to say it, about Najee Harris's presence on the overall upside for our Omarion Hampton, and especially in our dynasty game and in redraft, because there was rightfully had the feeling that if Najee Harris wasn't with the Chargers, if it was just Omarion Hampton got drafted into a backfield that had kind of Kiami Vidal and who else knows what's going on there, that Hampton would be right there probably with Ashton Genty as a first round potential redraft pick, but he's falling into round 3 or 4 because of the presence of Najee Harris. So when this came out, I think that people were not happy that this happened to Najee Harris, but people were not exactly unhappy that this happened.
I hear what you're not saying. So, yes.
Yeah, and so having the potential upside on Omarion Hampton in this offense, unfettered, really having like Vidal as the change of pace, Omarion Hampton has touched the ball 35 times, and somebody else should probably touch the ball one time before he touches it 36. That really opens up a tremendous amount of upside. That what we know that Jim Harbaugh and Greg Roman want to do with this offense. And you thinking back to guys like Frank Gore when he was with the 49ers, being that in year out top 5 running back in fantasy football. And that is very, very much in play for Omarion Hampton. And to be very honest, the Chargers have a very good offense. They've got great pieces, Justin Herbert, that offensive line. There's a real chance that Omarion Hampton is the running back 1 in Dynasty when we're sitting here next summer, should the worst case scenario happen with Najee Harris and he runs with the opportunity, because Bijan Robinson right now sitting as the consensus running back 1, Tyler Algier is going to be involved with the Falcons. Whatever you think about Tyler Algier, that's going to put a little bit of a cap on the upside. We just talked about David Montgomery with Jahmyr Gibbs. And so there's upside potential cap there. We haven't seen Ashton Genty on an NFL
field. But if Omarion Hampton outscores him his rookie season, we know who everyone's going to prefer going into year 2.
Exactly. And so, yeah, this is a good call out here. And let's just talk about a situation we hadn't been able to talk about yet.
And I'll be honest. I took this. We're not, reinventing the wheel by telling you that Omarion Hampton is a good player and you want him on your dynasty team. But I did kind of use this as a proxy to talk about this Najee Harris situation on this show topic, even though the show is, running back breakouts. It still gives us an ability to talk about this a little bit. So I do want to ask another question, Jeff, and just let this breathe a little bit here. Omarion Hampton, obviously, excited about what he could look like if Najee Harris isn't able to play. But we talked about how Greg Roman does like to have these committee backfields. Who do you think is the other running back to roster here? Let's just worst case scenario, Najee Harris misses all of training camp, misses the first half of the season, never really gets up to speed, and I'm not saying that's going to happen, but in this hypothetical world that we're living in right now, is it Hassan Haskins, or do you think that he's mostly special teams? Kamani Vidal, we saw him last year, but pretty underwhelming, or are we maybe even thinking about Raheem Sanders, a guy who went undrafted, but really does a lot of the same things that Najee Harris can do?
Raheem Sanders, if you play Devy, if you're familiar, he was going to be running back 1 in his class a couple of seasons ago, and then had a couple of disappointing college seasons. So I think when you're looking at overall upside, potentially the questions around there, Sanders, I think, is the most intriguing. I think it's Vidal, to be honest. I think that Vidal having a year in that system, everything that I've seen out of Chargers camp, and the Chargers are one of my training camp teams. So I am a little bit extra plugged in on them. It just has been, Vidal has been repping with the ones. There's been positive conversation about Vidal. We saw the other day the signing of Nyheim Hines, and everybody ran with that means that Najee Harris is done because they signed Nyheim Hines. But I do think that it's interesting when they did that, because the press releases, everybody around the team said that they have signed running back slash returner Nyheim
Yes.
Hines. And so the other story with the Chargers was the retirement of Mike Williams, and Darius Davis has been plugged in as the returner there. He flashed a little bit on offense last year when given opportunity. And so I think that signing of Nyheim Hines, they made sure to list him as returner. I think that basically, hey, one of our receivers retired. We're going to need Davis a little bit more than we thought we were going to. We're going to need a body here that can catch some punts in camp and do those types of things. I think that plays into it as much as the Najee Harris situation. But for me, it's Vidal probably is the piece you want to hold, and Sanders is the player that I want to watch. I don't think Haskins is. He's a teamer that Jim Harbaugh knew with from Michigan last year, and to be honest, if Najee Harris is like done, then I think the running back 2 is probably not on this roster right now. Is probably where I land there.
I think you're probably right. And
I mean, Gus Edwards is still unsigned. I don't know if they want to go back there, but like
it would make
there's going to be
sense for a guy
cuts.
who knows the system inside and out. Yeah, I think that would make a lot of sense. But I just want to use this. Obviously, this is a show we're doing on running back breakouts, but training camp is here, and there's going to be a lot of news happening. We're not going to be publishing these on YouTube, but starting in about a week and a half, Jeff Bell and I are going to be joined every single week by Dan Hendry to go through a training camp weekly recap. We're going to be doing that on our audio feed. So if you look, whether it's Apple, Spotify, wherever you listen to your podcasts, if you just search Football Guys Dynasty Show, you'll be able to find Jeff and I on that platform. And we're going to be doing these shows. I mean, they're going to be an hour and a half, 2 hours long. We're going through every single team, every bit of news from every single week, and came up with this idea because we had Dan Hendry on a show a couple of weeks ago. Dan last year won the Drafters Fantasy Main Event Contest, a best ball tournament where he was able to take home $500,000. He also took 8th place in that same contest, so had himself a very lucrative 2024 season. But when I talked to him, I said, what was the edge that you had that you think helped you so much that year? And he said, jumping in right when training camp started. And the reality is that you can change your rankings faster than ADP can change. And he was able to just jump in while all of these parts were moving early in training camp and get some really good value. So, obviously we like the content that we make here on YouTube, but if you want to find this on the podcast side of what we're doing, it's the only place you'll be able to find these episodes. First episode is going to come out the first week of August, and then we'll do it every week leading up to kickoff. So on that note, Jeff, who is the next running back breakout that you would like to talk about?
Well, on that note, I am going to say, for all the content that we put out at Football Guys, I do think these training camp reports are the very best thing that we put out. We have significant quality control on these to make sure that no fluff is being involved. We have to be on the line on this. We're not giving you analysis. We're condensing the reporting that is involved in training camps into something that's very, very digestible every week. And I think that that's probably the best thing that we do put out content wise as a staff. But my next player,
just to say, if you want to hear how the sausage is made, we've got like 25 people working on these. I mean, it is hundreds of hours every single week going into these things. And to be honest, it's probably more information than you want to read. But what we do is we also summarize it into bullet points to make it, if you want to just sit down for 5 minutes and catch up, or if you want to spend hours every single week digging through these in-depth reports, definitely recommend checking that out. The Football Guys Training Camp Reports. First one will come out on August 4th, and then we'll have the accompanying podcast with it as well.
Yeah, and to give you an idea of, so I've done the Falcons, the Rams, and the Chargers. And if you remember Cordero Patterson, I was doing the Falcons training camp report. And when I tell you nobody was on Cordero Patterson, nobody was on Cordero Patterson. That was the Mike Davis is going in the 4th round. It's going to be the Mike Davis show. And from doing that, Dave knows nobody had more Cordero Patterson than I did that year. And Cordero Patterson was very, very good in fantasy football that year. And so that's just an example of the things that you can glean out of this. And even if you're an IDP player, we hit
Yeah.
defense. There's value in here for IDP as well. So we talk about the offensive line. If there's going to be a problem with the offensive line that could affect the teams, there is so much information in these reports.
And I mean, we spend, like I said, a lot of time putting these together. Now, 2 years ago, I remember the CJ Stroud rookie season. I remember just like saying, like, what is wrong with ADPs right now? Like the amount of buzz around Nico Collins and Tank Dell and where they're getting drafted makes no sense. I was walking out of almost every single draft when I was doing my best ball drafts, where I would just take CJ Stroud in round 15 and then pair him up with a Nico Collins or Tank Dell the round after. Ended up being one of the best stacks you could have gotten in fantasy this year. And it just seems like everybody really does just dig in. They get so entrenched in ADP, and wherever people are drafting players in May, you might see a move up half a round here or there, but outside of huge news, we don't see the movements that should happen. So I know we've spent like 5 minutes plugging these training camp reports, but it truly is one of the most valuable things that we do over at Football Guys. All right, Jeff, we've talked about those enough, but I'm excited, man. First week of training camp, it's here. Like there's stuff happening, and I'm buzzing about it. But let's keep going down the list. Who is another running back breakout you would like to discuss?
I want to talk about Travis Etienne at running back 31. And we saw Bashal Tootin being added to Jacksonville, and that took some of the steam off for Travis Etienne. And we know that Travis Etienne battled through an injury-plagued year last year, kind of gave way to Tank Bigsby, but everything that Liam Cohen has said since taking over the Jaguars coach is basically like, hey, Travis Etienne's really, really good. Like, and he's our guy, more or less. And so either one or two things are happening there. Either they're trying to bump up his trade value, which the team trading for him would use Travis Etienne should they trade for him, or they really do believe that he's very much their best guy. And I think that when you break it down, he is their best guy. And I think that everybody was very disappointed from him last year, and this for a lot of people were caught flat-footed from Tank Bigsby coming in there and really splitting that backfield. But we know those first 2 years how good Travis Etienne was, missing his rookie year with injury, those second and third year. I digress. This team likes Travis Etienne. We know that he has been a very good fantasy player in the past. Running back 31, 26 years old, still has a lot of good football ahead of him. And I think that this offense should have a much, much higher upside, having a healthy Trevor Lawrence, well, ideally healthy. There's rumors about him having a throwing sleeve on right now, but Brian Thomas Jr., we saw the breakout from Brian Thomas Jr. last year. We saw the addition of Travis Hunter. There is pieces in this offense that give a very high ceiling. And if Travis Etienne is the main bell cow back for them, or the main guy that's most involved in all the different areas, because if Tank Bigsby is involved, we've not seen him ever involved in the passing game. And we've already seen concerns about Bashal Tutin's ball security, which is something that we knew coming into it. And so if you're fumbling when basically guys are in sweats, you got a long way to go before a coach is trusting you with the ball in the game. And so I think that that's where Etienne has the potential to be actively involved as the passing down back, plus being the main guy on early downs. And I think that there's just so much upside here for a running back 31 that we loved in Dynasty a year ago.
Yeah, and I'm not perfect, Jeff. You know, I get swept up in rookie fever, and immediately after the NFL draft, I remember like wanting, yeah, like just fall in love with Bashal Tutin the way that everybody else did. You know, a fun name, off the charts athleticism. But then for me, it was as simple as when OTA started. I just saw an interview with Liam Cohen where he just like laughed at the idea where they were like, "So, are you guys trying to trade Travis Etienne away?" And he was like, "What? No, like he's our RB1. Like we're gonna give him the ball as much as we can." And then it just kind of forced me to step back and just think about it objectively. Like, wait, hold on. We have a first round running back who has been a stalwart in this offense and very good for the last 2 years. No, they're not just going to replace him with a guy that they drafted on day 3 and immediately updated my rankings. And I've been very much so on the Travis Etienne train since. Looking at my redraft rankings, you know, I've got him about 8 spots ahead of consensus because I am just projecting the workload to go to him. I think we'll see a dash of Bashal Tutin. We'll see a dash of Tank Bigsby, but I think that Travis Etienne is going to do what he's done for the last few years and just be a workhorse in, you know, hopefully an above average offense this year. But yeah, you're getting no pushback from me at all on this Travis Etienne take.
When the season started last year, where do you think Travis Etienne was in dynasty running back ranks?
I want to say RB6.
Yeah, RB7 in keep
Yeah.
trade cut when the
Yeah.
season
I
started
mean,
last
he was
year.
a young
RB
first round pick.
31 now,
Yeah.
and he's going to be a free agent
You're
after
telling
this
me
year.
RB
He's
31?
Yeah, he's RB 31 in keep trade cut currently. Yeah,
That's
exactly.
crazy.
And he's going to be
That
free
is
agent too.
crazy.
So it's the
Yeah.
type of thing of like you could easily see like should Tootin gain ground on him, should Bigsby continue to maintain his role, he's going to hit the open market and somebody's going to say we're going to give this guy a shot, and similar maybe to the J.K. Dobbins and Chargers situation last year. I mean, there's just so much talking dynasty wise. There's just so much upside, I think, on Travis Etienne right now, especially at a running back 31 valuation.
Yeah, and I know this is the dynasty show, but like, we talk best ball and redraft this time of year as well. And I just did a Yahoo draft that Justin Boone put together. So a lot of really sharp analysts in here. I'm looking right now. I got Travis Etienne in the 8th round, which is just unbelievable to me that we're looking at a guy that, last year we were drafting in round two, like in round three, if you got lucky. But yeah, falling all the way to round 8 now, it just seems like a lot of people are still holding on to that excitement about Bashal Tootin and just completely ignoring everything that we're hearing come out of Jacksonville. So that's a good call out, Jeff. I'm going to talk about a guy that you talked about not too long ago, but hey, alignment, we like that when we both like a player. Tyjae Spears right now is getting drafted as the RB 39, and this is a guy who came out of a very good running back class. Probably would have been the RB2 in that class if it weren't for the fact that he didn't have an ACL. Medical concerns caused him to slip a little bit, but he has maintained his health now through his first 2 years in the NFL. Just such a good player, has that can make a guy miss in a phone booth, a jitterbug, human joystick, whatever you want to use to describe him. Just a quick twitch player who can just make defenders miss, has the blazing breakaway speed when he can get out in the open field as well. And the issue so far has been a lack of usage. He was behind Derrick Henry, he was behind Tony Pollard, but in the one lone start that we saw last year from Tyjae Spears, he had 24 touches and 103 yards. So when the opportunity arises, he can step up and be that guy. Now we're looking at Tony Pollard getting up there in age a little bit. I don't think that they're going to just force a 50-50 split by any means, but we are hearing a lot of the same thing that we heard last year, that Brian Callahan is saying that they do want to have a 1A, 1B approach. And I know, I think that's why we're looking at such a discount on Tyjae Spears, because we heard that last offseason and it didn't happen. But I'm still looking at a young, talented player on what we expect to be in an ascending offense. If he can take over the role this year, that would be fantastic. If not, Tony Pollard is a free agent after this year. Really what this comes down to is me just wanting to bet on young talent, and that's what Tyjae Spears is. And right now you can get him as the RB 39 in Dynasty.
Yeah, and I think that when we really look at Tyjae Spears and what happened last year, if you remember back to his rookie year, think about how good Derrick Henry was last year for the Ravens. His rookie year, he forced that into a near 50-50 split with Derrick Henry, and his passing game usage was very, very high as a rookie. And so I think what happened a little bit last year, because he got into the doghouse for the coaches. And so my assumption is basically you've got this guy coming in as a rookie and basically saying, hey, Derrick Henry was the dude. And he probably looked up to Derrick Henry on some level. And when you're there and sharing a backfield with him and almost splitting a backfield 50-50 with a guy that is one of the superstars in the league, coming into year two, you're probably thinking, yeah, you signed Tony Pollard. I don't care. I'm going to be the guy. And I think that he probably maybe came into camp with that type of an attitude because he got into the doghouse and he got himself benched. And then towards the end of the year, Tony Pollard wore down, was injured. The Titans season was over, and Tyjae Spears was amazing when he played. He was a top 5 fantasy running back during the fantasy football playoffs. And there were comments right after that of basically Brian Callahan saying, yeah, I was too hard on the guy, more or less. And we put him into the doghouse. We didn't play him. That was the wrong thing to do. He's much too talented for that. And we're going to make sure that that's different next year. And looking at it too, one of the things I like to do is look at contracts, and Tony Pollard,
Yep.
he is signed through 2026, but
Guaranteed money runs out after this year.
Yeah, they can cut him, and they would have a 2 million cap hit, but they would have 7.5 million in savings, and 7.5 million can do a lot on a team. And so that's where, should Tyjae Spears start to pull even or even start to pull ahead, he could pull really ahead. And Tony Pollard could not be in their plans for next year. And one of the things we're looking at for Dynasty is how can these valuations change going into next year? You could have a situation where Tony Pollard, we've seen better players be cap casualties, and he could be released. He could be moved on, and maybe and Khalil Mullings maybe steps in as the backup there, like the guy that can do a little bit of early down. But it's really the Tyjae Spears show that's potentially in play. I mean, we saw Chase Brown from Brian Callahan's old
Yeah.
team, a later on pick, that Tyjae Spears is better in the passing game than Chase Brown, but really kind of become the overall lead back there. I think that that's definitely in play for Spears, and at a running back 39, yeah, I love that. I'd be able to get that value on him.
And what we're talking about here is a potential double breakout where he can be productive this year. And then if Tony Pollard leaves after this season, then we get that offseason bump in excitement as well. So Tyjae Spears right now, a guy that, like we said, just turned 24 years old, still very, very young. RB 39 right now could easily crack inside the top 20 with a good season and a Tony Pollard departure.
Yeah, we know that Spears is good. We know that. We know that he is a good player. We've
His health.
seen him be a good player. And so that, yeah, he just didn't get the opportunity last year. And then when he did, again, great player.
All right, bring it home, Jeff. Last guy you want to talk about, then I'll have one more before we finish off here. Who is another guy that you think could break out in 2025?
So I talked about Travis Etienne. So of course I'm going to talk about Trevor Etienne now. Got to make sure that I mentioned both brothers here. But I think that when you look at, it was interesting. I just saw the other day a piece that came out. It was talking about Eric Eager, who, if you followed fantasy football, Eric Eager was very involved in doing a lot of great data work for fantasy football in general. Got hired by the Panthers, and basically the Dan Morgan, everybody involved really loved Trevor Etienne through the process. And Eric Eager's modeling told them, you got to take him now. They drafted him early on in the 4th round. And right after that, running backs started flying off the board. And so I'm seeing this, and I'm seeing that Trevor Etienne was a player that they were enamored with through the process. And right now, there's a Chuba Hubbard that is with the Panthers. And again, we talk about how values change year over year. I remember last year saying, yeah, I think Chuba Hubbard is going to be involved. Everybody was on the Jonathan Brooks train, and Chuba Hubbard was completely written off. And now it's like completely flipped to the point where like Chuba Hubbard is like the stud now, apparently. And if you really dig into the numbers, the passing game efficiency was horrendous for Chuba Hubbard last year. I think he was literally might have been the very worst back in the passing game. And so you've got that going on there. And you've got I know he signed a 4-year contract, but it was structured basically as a 1-year deal. They can get out of that contract should they want to. I know they added Rico Dowdle as well. And there have already been comments from Dave Canales kind of saying, when we look at it, we kind of split our running backs between having bruisers, that is Chuba Hubbard, and Rico Dowdle trading off as the 1A, 1B in that role. And then we got Trevor Etienne over here. And I think that there's a lot of view around Trevor Etienne there. I saw him going undrafted in 4-round rookie drafts, or being the very last pick in 4-round. People are putting Brashad Smith ahead of him. He got drafted 150 places ahead of Brashad Smith. And so I think that he's just been completely forgotten about and written off. And when I look at the backs that are in front of him, I mean, this is the classic definition of a dead zone running back. Chuba Hubbard is, because this is a veteran that has accumulated some volume when given opportunity. Chuba Hubbard is a very good player, but I think that in an ideal world, they don't want Chuba Hubbard overly involved in the passing game. I think that there is a very real opportunity here for Trevor Etienne to be the passing down back immediately as a rookie, and having Dowdle and Hubbard trading off as getting a lot of that rushing volume, getting a lot of that early down volume. But when you look at the Panthers, they look at what their defense is. They just lost Josie Jewell, and so they have to replace their middle linebacker. Their defense is probably not going to be good. Their game scripts are probably going to involve a lot of throwing because they're going to be trailing. And Bryce Young is the type of quarterback that, despite his mobility, throwing to a running back is probably going to help Bryce Young, given his stature. And so I think that there's ample opportunity for Trevor Etienne to have a role immediately as a passing down back, get a lot more passing game volume than what people are going to realize is in play there. And should he solidify that, that really sets him up for Rico Dowdle's on a 1-year deal and they can get out of Chuba Hubbard's contract. They're hoping that maybe Jonathan Brooks comes back healthy. But even when you look at Chuba Hubbard's breakout last year, they tried very, very hard to make that a committee. They tried very hard to have Miles Sanders be involved, and just the level of play wasn't there. When Jonathan Brooks came back, they tried, and that ended sooner than they wanted to. They want this to be a committee backfield, and I think that Trevor Etienne can have the passing down role immediately.
So it's tough to push back too hard because he's just so cheap. Like you can get Trevor Etienne for basically nothing in Dynasty. And he did talk about it. I think that he would kind of be pigeonholed into being mostly a pass catcher. He's pretty undersized, and that's what he did best at college. The one thing that I struggle to get behind is you say that like they want it to be a committee. And when I look at Dave Canales' history, you know, when he was in Seattle, it was just the Kenneth Walker show. There was nobody else getting any other touches in that offense. And then we saw 2 years ago when he was in Tampa Bay before he got that head coaching gig with Carolina, it was Rachaad White just getting the highest opportunity share of any running back in the NFL. And then last year we saw the same with Chuba Hubbard. So my fear here is that it is Dave Canales' tendency to just want to kind of lean on one running back, as we've seen him do throughout his career, which again, like I don't want to sit here and like say that you're wrong or anything like that. This is the RB 58 that we're talking about. You can get him for a 4th round pick in Dynasty right now. He's not a player that I think anybody is saying is a sure thing. I think my fear here is that he would mainly just be relegated to passing down work and not much else. So I don't know how high the ceiling is here, but again, it's so cheap that I don't really know if it matters. I think something that you didn't even mention though is when you look at that 4th round of the NFL draft. Bashaw Tutin, Cam Scatabo, Trevor Etienne, Woody Marks, Jarquez Hunter. People, we talked about the excitement for Bashaw Tutin. Everybody loves Cam Scatabo. Woody Marks is this guy that everybody is saying, you know, is going to have a role and huge upside if Joe Mixon has the miss time. Jarquez Hunter, people are already gushing about the things that Sean McVay says about him. What I will say is of all of the round 4 running backs in this draft class, Trevor Etienne is the one getting the least amount of buzz and is by far the cheapest in Dynasty.
He is. And that's where, even if it is relegated to passing down work, you're talking about the 58th running back as a rookie, that if he grabs all the passing down, I just think that people are reading this backfield wrong, in my opinion. And I think that they are entirely dismissing Trevor Etienne. They're not realizing it's like he got the same draft capital as Bashaw Tutin, basically. And,
Right.
and everybody is like going basically
And
the same
Cam Scatabo.
draft capital as Cam Scatabo. It's like this isn't a guy this wasn't a 7th round pick. Like this, and the stories around him that they really wanted him. And I don't know. They had Rico Dowdle in the fold then. They had Chuba Hubbard in the fold then. They had Jonathan Brooks' potential, and they really wanted Trevor Etienne. And to me, that means they saw a very specific role that Trevor Etienne can play. I understand your running back.
Yeah, and I'm not trying to poke holes in your logic here, Jeff. We're talking about a guy that's essentially free in Dynasty leagues
wasn't the
right
OC
now.
in Seattle, first off. First off, in Seattle, he was not the offensive coordinator.
Passing
he
game
was
coordinator,
the
I believe.
quarterbacks coach.
Quarterbacks coach.
And they had Rashad Penny, who only played 5 games, was injured, and the only other back beyond Kenneth Walker in that was like DJ
Kenny
Dallas.
McIntosh.
So it's like
DJ Dallas. That's right. Yeah.
Travis Homer.
Yeah.
They did nothing there. And who was the other back that Tampa had before because they drafted Bucky Irving, and obviously Dave Canales was gone there. But
Rashad White was Leonard Fournette was still there, I believe, in that first year with Dave Canales. I could be wrong. I think I'd have to look it up. 2023 Bucks.
Again, these are you construct sometimes with veterans. You get into a situation where you have a player that you think is going to fill a specific role, and then when the lights come on, Chase Edmonds. So similar example. Right. You have a player that you think can fill a specific role, and then when the lights come on, they can't fill that role, and all of a sudden you are stuck. And I think really that's kind of what happened with Chuba Hubbard last year, where it was
100%.
Like,
yeah.
It was, we think we gave a lot of money to Miles Sanders. We got Jonathan Brooks. Jonathan Brooks can be healthy. We like Chuba, but at the same time, like we've got other pieces here, and it should have been the Jonathan Brooks backfield with Chuba Hubbard kind of trading off there. And so by signing Rico Dowdle, I mean, that's not a nothing burger. They had a pretty significant outlay there. They want this to be a committee. I'm just going to say they want it to be a committee. I don't care. They want it to be a committee.
I think we've spent enough time on Trevor Etienne, and yeah, I mean, like I said, he's basically free. There's like no risk here. The only risk you're really taking is a bench spot, and yeah, we can get a lot more clarity now, Jeff. If you are right, I will give you your flowers on this one as soon as I can. I want to wrap this one up though, and I'm going to go not quite as deep as Trevor Etienne, but still right now being ranked as the RB 48 in Dynasty. Ray Davis is just a player that I like so much. I love guys that profile for both passing down work and goal line work, and that's what you're getting for Ray Davis. And the problem so far has been that the opportunity isn't there. He's been in the shadow of James Cook since he came into the league. But last year, in the one lone start that we saw, James Cook missed one game last year, and in that game, Ray Davis 23 touches, 152 yards, just such immense upside. He is a good running back in a good offense, and right now he has one guy ahead of him who is very unhappy with his current contract situation. And Jeff, you can probably shine a little bit more light on this being a Bills fan. I don't know what you've seen so far. Do you expect James Cook to be playing this year, or do you think this holdout might bleed into the season a little bit?
I expect James Cook to play.
Yeah.
My expectation is James Cook plays, but I'm not ruling out that we get a little bit of the Josh Jacobs self-preservation mode
Yeah.
special
Yeah.
going on here. And Ray Davis, I think that Ray Davis is probably the reason why James Cook hasn't gotten paid, to be honest
I
with you,
think so.
because
Yeah. Like, why pay James Cook $15 million a year when you got Ray Davis on a rookie contract that can do a lot of the same, doesn't have the breakaway speed, but can do a lot of the same things James Cook can do.
yeah, and part of me was, I mean, they like Ty Johnson, so that's probably why they didn't draft another back. Part of me was a little bit surprised they didn't draft another back, but I think Ray Davis, they feel very comfortable in their team building, and this is it's been a frustration point as a Bills fan for 20 plus years, and I granted there's an entirely different brain trust, but it seems like when they were bad, they were on a 3-year cycle where they would basically draft either a running back, a linebacker, or a cornerback. Those players would be very good. They would let them walk in free agency, and then
Yeah.
they would go and draft another one. And
Mhm.
like over and over, like Marshawn Lynch, Willis McGahee, like Nate Clements, like over and over again, these would keep happening. I just don't think that they feel like they need to pay a running back. I think that they took James Cook on day 3. They took Ray Davis James Cook was a day 2 pick. They took Ray Davis on day 3. We've seen them. They take Zach Moss, I believe, was a day 2 pick right after Devin Singletary was a day 2 pick. They do
Yep.
not have a problem using draft picks on running backs. I think they don't want to pay this position. I think that when they broke it down, I mean, they've done a very good job, one of the better jobs across the league of locking down Spencer Brown, young right tackle. They've locked down Christian Benford, cornerback, young cornerback. They've found late blue chip positions. They paid those players, locked those players down. As we know, Josh Allen's not making nothing. I
Right.
just think they view it as a fungible position. And I think that Ray Davis, should James Cook miss any time, then I think Ray Davis, you're talking, 20, 25 touches upside there. I do think Ty Johnson would be pretty involved in the passing game should that happen, but Ray Davis would have that 18 touchdown upside that James Cook flashed last year. And then next year, you're going in again. What are you looking at? Dynasty, you're looking at James Cook is definitely leaving this team, and you've got a window of three or 4 months before the draft where this is the Ray Davis show, and he would spike into being probably a top 20 dynasty running back under that situation.
And the last thing I'll say about Ray Davis, I think you're right that Ty Johnson probably would take on some of the passing down work, but I do think Ray Davis is a much better pass catcher than people realize. He was heavily involved in Kentucky as a pass catcher, and we saw it last year. He was highly efficient as a pass catcher, and I think it's just the build that he has. He has that real high BMI, a stocky build, and it kind of reminds me of a Leonard Fournette, where like you don't see him out there dicing guys up on routes, but just able to kind of find the soft spot when he runs on a route, and he's got shockingly soft hands as well. So even though he might look like a bruiser, he is a little bit better in the passing game than I think people can realize. And we saw that in college, and we saw that his rookie season on an efficiency standpoint as well. So hopefully you guys listen to the show, and we got some good running back breakouts for you, Jeff. Any big picture kind of takeaways of this show before we sign off here?
Yeah, just thinking running back when you're looking at breakouts. I mean, making sure that you have rosters loaded with running backs when you're in deep leagues that have these backup guys that can ascend into situations is a big key there. I hat tip to Jordan McNamara and Chad Parsons, who did this Dynasty show before us, but they were really on it about having just a tight wide receiver room and having a deep bench of these running backs. And that's really what you want to do. That's how you want to build your dynasty rosters. You can be careful with tight ends, because I'm telling you, it is so easy to end up with 7 tight ends on your dynasty team. And
Uh-huh.
we're like, what are you doing here?
And 5 of them
Just
are
have
just like a different version of a Dalton Schultz.
Yes, exactly. And so have that dedication on having that deep running back bench, but recognize that these things change very, very quickly. Like we talked about Trevor Etienne, who was running back 7 in Dynasty just 1 year ago, not even a year ago, the beginning of the season last year, and now running back 31. Set yourself up in position for that, have these players that can recognize these spikes in values. We all know what the contracts are for players, and we can see who is in potential situations to be in much better situations next year.
I want to thank y'all so much for tuning in. As I always say, the show would be nothing without you, the audience. So thank you for taking the time to listen. Jeff and I will be back next week. I don't know what the topics are going to be, but we'll figure it out. We'll have some fun stuff to talk about. So thank you so much for tuning in, and we will see you next week.